Contrary to popular belief, SAO has many amazing stories in all its wonderful arcs, but which is the best? Well, for me, in last place I have Aincrad. Now, before you crucify me, let me explain. I love Aincrad. How could you not? There's a reason it's so iconic. However, anybody that's read it, I think, could tell you it's easily the worst reading experience. That's because of two reasons. The first being the author obviously is much less experienced at the time, so his technical skill just isn't as good in the first entry in the series. Seeing him rapidly improve his skill in each new entry is actually one of the fun things about reading the novels, but I digress. The second reason is Aincrad is by far the shortest of all the main arcs, as originally it was written under the constraints of the rules of a writing competition. You can really feel that when going through it. Time progresses super rapidly and the plot is over before you really get a chance to indulge yourself. That's why the progressive remake exists, as even at the time the author wanted to do more of that arc but couldn't due to the constraints. While progressive is very fun, I have only read 2 volumes of it so far, so I can't really count it here as part of Aincrad in good faith. For me, Aincrad is great, but I can't deny that it falls short of the rest of the arcs in terms of my experience going through it, due to those constraints that it was made under. So, in 4th place, I have Fairy Dance. I actually think this arc is underrated and has been tainted in the minds of many people that love to hate on this show. I already made a video on the Suguha stuff, so I'm not going to rehash it here. For me, what mostly makes this arc as enjoyable as it is the interactions between Kirito and Leafa. It kind of takes me back to those days of gathering the boys for a sleepover and playing Monster Hunter for as long as we could stay awake for. You get swept up in this grand adventure against the odds that the two of them have embarked on, and their chemistry is top tier. The banter they share often had me laughing out loud, and when reading it, I loved certain back and forths they had. Like when they fell into Jotunheimer and Kirito fell asleep. At that point, it was 2 AM already, and such, the fatigue was lulling them into sleep's seductive embrace. However, when you fall asleep in ALO, you get logged out. Where they are currently is unsafe, so if they were to be logged out, their avatars would most likely be killed, and they would respawn all the way back in their home cities. That was valuable time that they could not afford to waste. So Leafa woke Kirito up by using a punch skill on his head. Then it felt like Kirito took inspiration from being woken up in such a violent manner, and soon after did something similar to Suguha when they met up in the morning and he saw she was still pretty sleepy. Honestly, if it wasn't for both Sonon and Hyujo, I would say that Kirito and Leafa's dynamic is the most fun one in the main series, which is why the emotional rift that happened between them was both so heart-wrenching and also pretty compelling for me. Also, another thing I really enjoyed about this arc is that it reinforces one of the main running themes throughout all of SAO, that being, what is real strength? After kind of overcoming Kaiba and surviving Aincrad as one of its biggest clearing contributors, Kirito subconsciously develops somewhat of an ego, a subtle belief that because of that, he is strong, that he can overcome anything with his own 2 hands. So then when he is rendered utterly powerless by Sugu and is humbled, we get this amazing self-reflection monologue where he realizes that this completely doomed situation may have been brought about because of his own hubris, thinking that just because he grinded high stats in a game once, he could be the hero again and solve issues like this all on his own, where in reality he had no real power, and if he had shared what he had learned with those who do, maybe this wouldn't have happened. It was a really defining moment for Kirito, and it sets up for some really satisfying moments in later arcs. So yeah, no matter what anybody says, I really enjoyed this arc and I love the world of ALO. Moving on, in 3rd place, I have Phantom Bullet. This is honestly the most criminally underrated arc in SAO, and it is tragic how little it's talked about. For me, honestly, if it wasn't for some of the other arcs being super god tier, then this would easily be the best arc in the series. I love Sonon, I love her arc, I love GGO, I love BOB, I love Defcon, I love everything, man. Where to start? Let's go with Sonon. I've always loved characters with her kind of personality. Kind of witty, kind of cocky, great to bounce with, and has these fun, expressive reactions. But arguably the greatest thing about her is that there is no character that better embodies SAO's overall theme of strength than her. Because of her PTSD, Sonon sadly views herself as weak, and is scared that she'll be at the mercy of her condition for her entire life. However, when she tries GGO on recommendation to help her with her condition, to her surprise, it actually did help a little. She could now look at images of guns and even talk about them without having an attack. Her hope was that if she could overcome people that she perceived to be strong in GGO, then perhaps she could get closer to Sonone and leave Asuna Shino's weakness behind. She encounters Kirito and he consistently pulls off feats of wonder in front of her, or inspiring actions that she didn't even know were possible. So she comes to view him as someone that is very strong. Then while progressing through BOB, we get one of my favorite scenes in all of SAO. After encountering Death Gun, Kirito is terrified. Not only did it bring back traumatic memories for him, but now the situation has escalated dramatically in a horrifying way. Sonone finds him in the lobby and he is as pale as a ghost, visibly trembling and with a look of extreme distress on his face. It reminds her of how she looked when she's having an attack from her condition. This really surprised her. What could somebody that is so strong be so scared of? She thought he would be unable to progress through the tournament, but not only did Kirito manage to collect himself and make it through the next round, but he even managed to best her in brilliant fashion. She was completely stunned by this. He was just like her after an attack. How had he managed to overcome that and recover so well? She had to know. How could she become strong like him? Hoping that this could be the answer that she had so desperately been searching for ever since that day in the post office. And this reply Kirito gives Sonone is absolutely beautiful. I cannot accurately put into words just how perfect this indirect call out to Sonone is. This is the flaw in her approach of leaving Asuna Shino behind to become Sonone. It's a lesson that Kirito learned painfully at the end of Fairy Dance. Now he believes that strength is not how good you are at something, but rather it's about the ability to endure, regardless of any fear or reservation that you might have. What Sonone is doing currently is trying to block out the emotion, and while that will bring her a bit of comfort, it won't address the fundamental issue. The strength to face her weakness and fight to overcome it is what Kirito shows her when he goes to face his demons in the form of Death Gun. It all comes together in one of the most satisfying payoffs I've ever seen in anything ever, when Sonone finally manages to overcome her own demons in order to handle the model gun to bluff against Kyoji, buying her time to get away from him. Seriously, I was so proud of her and I just wanted to scream out and give her a congratulatory hug when I read this. It's such an amazing, masterfully done arc, and I cannot believe that the anime cut out this crucial resolution point for it. If any of you are not sold on Phantom Bullet or like the anime, I cannot recommend reading the novel enough. I promise you, it is worth it and you will love every second of it. Not only does it fully explore one of the best character arcs in the series, but the whole Bullet of Bullets tournament is extremely tense and had me clutching the book, unable to put it down even at really stupidly late times at night. I rarely feel like that when experiencing stories these days, so I will always regard Phantom Bullet as one of the best SAO arcs that there will probably ever be. So after gushing that much over Phantom Bullet, what could possibly be next? How can it get better from there? Trust me, that's what I also thought when I first finished the arc as well. But after experiencing the zenith that is Asnization, it's no surprise that it managed to take the second spot on this list. This arc is a journey, an experience completely different from all the other SAO arcs. So you follow the three central protagonists from childhood, and while that is quite slow at first, seeing their progression as they bond and overcome hurdles gets you really invested. It honestly feels like having a friend that you don't get to see IRL much anymore, but you still message really often and keep up with each other. So then when the climaxes do come, my lord, I've never done drugs before, but I imagine this is how it feels when you inject that straight into your more sensitive veins. The whole part of Hyujo and Kirito ascending the Axiom Church is one of my favorite arcs in any story in any form of media. At the time when I was reading it, this is where the novels currently were at. Impatiently checking sites for fan translations every month was a whole experience in and of itself. But at the time, we had kind of assumed that Alicization would be the final SAO arc, and it all seemed to be coming to a head here. Literally anything was possible, and the tension could not be any more immense. Not only did every battle seem like a Herculean task that you weren't fully sure that Kirito and Hyujo could overcome, but also if by some miracle they did manage it, waiting for them was the toughest opponent SAO has ever seen even to this day. This tension is why Quinella is one of my favorite SAO villains. Because of all the talk and build-up surrounding her, what she's managed to achieve, and her demeanor, she has this very commanding, threatening presence. It reminds me a lot of Vader or Azula if you guys are familiar with those characters. You just know in your brain that when they show up, is going down. They are not fucking around and you are in for a bad time. This part also has one of the most emotional payoffs I have ever experienced. By this point, we are 5 novels deep and we have yet to clear one of the main central goals going all the way back to the start, that being saving Alice. After all that time, seeing the 3 of them reunite here again, finally at the apex of the Axiom Church, oh man, honestly I'm getting emotional just thinking about it again. It was such a beautiful moment and little did I know it would end up being an extremely cruel one, as that was the last time the 3 of them got to share a somewhat personal moment with each other. For the following fight against Quinella is straight up not only one of the best fights in all of Astonization, but one of the best in the whole series full stop. Unlike a lot of the villains that are built up in the way that she is, she actually delivers upon and exceeds all expectations. It's the only fight in the entire series where you genuinely are not sure if our main characters are going to prevail, and really, they almost didn't. It took absolutely everything and then some from each of them to just barely prevail in this clash for the ages. And while they did prevail, it was not a clean victory by any means. As I mentioned earlier, after spending something like 2 years and 6 volumes with these characters, you become really attached to them. So Hyujo dying in Kirito's arms was completely heart-wrenching. He was the one character you expected to make it to the end, and Kirito always used to talk about how excited he was to introduce him to the rest of the main gang. So to lose him here, it was really shocking and honestly so tragic. I haven't even gotten to the War of the Underworld part yet, and if I did, this video would probably be an hour long. So I'll just mention that Alice's development is amazing. It has some of my favorite Asuna moments, and finishing an arc that you've been following for years just hits you in a more emotional level than you usually would experience when finishing a series. So for all those reasons, I'll always remember the time of my life very fondly when I was reading Astonization. So that leaves only one arc left, and to anybody that follows my channel, it probably doesn't come at any surprise that Mother's Rosario is my favorite Sword Art Online arc. This arc is so special to me as it's the one that I directly relate to the most. Like seriously, it's pretty freaky how similar Asuna's trials and tribulations here were to mine. Like her, I had an extremely unpleasant relationship with my parents, and mine even physically abused me. It was pretty rough. Asuna describes family dinners as this stressful, soulless experience where you're just praying it ends without any conversation, as conversation that does happen is never fun and friendly, but rather you are put on trial and brutally scolded over any minor imperfection you might have. This was so chillingly accurate to my own experience. I remember even being physically beaten for getting 9 out of 10 on a spelling test. It was so demoralizing and you actually fear dinner time. It doesn't get much better with extended family dinners either. As Asta describes, it's so cynical and messed up. You are not a human being. You think you're there to enjoy yourself and have a good time with family? No, you're there as an object representing your achievements, solely for the purpose of mums and dads to brag about who is raising their kids better, literally just to inflate their own egos in some sort of narcissistic dick measuring contest. This is how I imagine pageant dogs feel. It's extremely dehumanizing, and it's no wonder all Asuna wanted was for night to come, so that she could maybe find some sort of temporary escape from the hell that is the family gathering. How she felt was so painfully familiar, and I could really relate to both the hopelessness she felt and the fact that she had given up on ever coming to an understanding with her parents. Then in comes Yuki, this funny, a bit aloof free spirit that always expressed whatever was on her mind and was true to what she believed in. We get this really beautiful moment when the Sleeping Knights are trying to get to the floor boss. The current frontliners of New Aincrad are assembling their raid party to do the boss themselves and won't let the Sleeping Knights through, no matter what Asuna says. Seeing the negotiations are going nowhere, Yuki steps in and makes the decision to fight. This is really shocking to Asuna, as the Sleeping Knights are heavily outnumbered here. The chances of the fight going well was seemingly pretty low, but that is not the point. The point is this.
アスナ、ぶつからなきゃ伝わらないことだってあるよ。例えば、自分がどれくらい真剣なのか、とかね。
This is a quote that really resonated with me and I thought about it a lot. It's just so true and it applies in so many areas of life. Communication is ultimately really hard and I'm sure any of you watching this can think of times that you were misunderstood or shied away from painful conversations. Instead, just putting on a smile and bearing all the grief to protect yourself from the potential backlash of confronting the problem. It's not fun. Trust me, that's what I did all my childhood, and whenever I tell close friends about some of the shit I endured, they're always really surprised I didn't either myself or become a very hateful person. So when Asuna reflects on what Yuki said, she steels herself to confront her mother and make her understand how she feels. As always, her mother tries to dismiss her in a very cold fashion, but this time Asuna does not wilt. Instead, doubling down, and she is prepared to go wherever this conversation needs to go for her to get her point across. Seeing how serious Asuna is, her mother now finally hears her out. They bear everything to each other in a really wholesome heart-to-heart and finally managed to reach an understanding. I know this is going to sound like something corny you hear on Twitter, but genuinely, seeing Asuna overcome what I knew to be a nigh impossible mountain, it was just so inspiring. And so I also grit my teeth to confront my parents, something I had been scared of facing for years. It was tough, and we still aren't really close like a noble, happy family. All those years of pain is just not really something that you can easily forget, honestly. But because I faced them, my brothers at least are having a much easier time growing up than I did. For that, I am thankful. This whole experience really brought me so much closer to Asuna, and just like her, I came to love Yuki very dearly, which is why her death is still to this day the most heart-wrenching and memorable fictional death I have ever experienced. This arc brought so many emotions out of me, and it's one of the few pieces of media I can say impacted me for the better. So that's why out of all the SAO arcs, I think I will always love Mother's Rosario the most. What do you guys think of my rankings, and what is your ranking of all the SAO arcs? I always found these sort of top 5 lists really entertaining, so I'm really curious to see what rankings you guys have. Please leave them in the comments down below. I'll also try to reply to any questions you guys might have about my own rankings. I know there are more SAO arcs like Unital Ring and Moon Cradle, but as of right now, I'm making my way through Volume 20, so I can't in good faith put them on my list yet as I've not finished it. But out of what I have read, it's been really fun so far, and it's really cool to see how far Ronnie has come. She's a really great addition in this arc. Please do not forget to like the video so other SAO fans can find it.
自分も虫なんだよ。それでも僕はまだ二足歩行のアリンコになったんだけど。
I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.